Some free school meal parcels are insultingly pitiful, but there is an alternative policy option. One which puts more food in the fridges of hard-up families, costs the British taxpayer exactly the same, and doesn't treat the poor like shameful scroungers who'd rather spend their money on cigs and booze and iPhone contracts than feeding their own hungry children. To prove this point, I'm going to Asda.
You've probably seen this photo. Posted by a mum, it's a government food parcel, meant to be worth £15 and to feed one child lunch for a week. We've bought its contents for £3.79. It's one loaf of bread, 2 baking potatoes, 1 tomato, 5 portions of fruit, sliced cheese, 1 tin of beans, 3 yogurts, a small bag of pasta, 2 bits of malt loaf and 2 carrots, with the prices for potatoes, yogurts, malt loaf and tomatoes divided from their multi-pack cost. Despite Boris Johnson calling this parcel disgraceful, it's only a few items short of what the government expects contractors to provide. When you add the necessary milk, 2 extra tomatoes, tins of sweet corn and meat, the total moves up to £6.16, and that's according to their specifications. How did we end up in this horrific position, where families are meant to be given enough food to feed their child for several days, but the actual food parcel they receive could barely cover a couple meals? In short, Conservative politicians don't want to give these people cash. Tory Ben Bradley actually said giving out free school meals was effectively the same as giving £20 to a crack den or brothel. In fact, they originally didn't want to give them food. The likes of Matt Hancock, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson originally voted against the extension of free school meals to beyond term time.
Why did you, as Health Secretary, vote against this?
Well, because the reason that I'm glad now is because we've been able to sort that out and put it in place.
Well, the reason you're glad now is that you got shamed.
No, thanks to you.
Until Marcus Rashford came along.
And I'm grateful, by the way, to Marcus Rashford, who highlighted the issue and is doing quite an effective job by comparison with the right honourable gentleman in holding the government to account for these issues.
Pressure from the young Manchester United footballer, himself a recipient of free school meals as a child, forced MPs from publicly voting against the measures to actually increasing their provision. The reason for the initial resistance cuts to the heart of Conservative ideology. That any individual can rise to the top of British society, no matter their background. That people aren't poor because of structural forces, unforeseen events like a global plague, discrimination or abuse and trauma, but rather their own laziness or moral failure. Poor British people have been stigmatised by the media as benefits cheats.
And most of the residents
Penny for the poor
are claiming benefits.
Scroungers, constantly looking for ways to steal from the hard-working British taxpayer. You can't give impoverished parents money to feed their children. They'd rather spend it in a brothel. So here we are, in a position where, because we don't trust the working class to spend money feeding their kids, and the Chancellor is desperately looking for ways to spend less, not more cash. So private companies are given contracts to provide food parcels meant to feed one child for a week. And they have overheads, not least profit motives, and that £15 gets whittled away. But what if we did trust working class families to spend money feeding their kids and gave them the money and dignity to do so? Well, here's what it's possible to buy for that same £15. We've added eggs, nuts, a selection of pulses like lentils and black beans, and upgraded the milk, as well as fresh vegetables, sausages, soup, tin tomatoes, and a pack of bourbons, because we all have a biscuit. The food here totaled £14.94. And how about if we went a step further, recognising that it's never been cheaper to borrow money? Interest rates are at record lows, indeed some are negative, and actually bought a food parcel that costs an extravagant 20 quid. For that money, you could add a whole roast chicken, orange juice, more fruit and more greens. The Department of Education says they're looking into the inadequate parcels. A spokesperson said, "We have clear guidelines and standards for food parcels, which we expect to be followed. Parcels should be nutritious and contain a varied range of food." And Boris Johnson said,
the company in question has rightly apologised and agreed to reimburse. But
at the moment, we're arguing about whether the contents of a food parcel match government specification. Instead, we should be arguing about whether food parcels deliver value for money at all, and what the motivations behind refusing to give money to the poor really are.